Alright, so now we're in Cheshire. That's where we are lives. In the normal command bunker to see actually what happens. Well, if I remember correctly, I'm going to use the beginning of this part to finally read the so enemy
Wow.
intel.
Did Crew Alexandra's attempt at getting up to the big leagues really go down that badly?
British jokes.
Well, Cheshire Crew. Of course, I was going to say that.
British and soccer jokes.
I'm disappointed we don't run into a house with British people having tea and we shoot them.
Unfortunately, the
Nah.
situation is very bleak. Oh shit!
Even to be honest, even in a zombie apocalypse, we probably still want to go down the pub.
So I have to ask, would it have been less or more violent if we just tried to solve all our differences with aliens through a game of soccer?
Well, yeah. It could be a Space Jam movie that actually has a chance of being half decent.
Anyway, here's for some enemy intel since we're at a good point to mention.
Just replace football with basketball. So avoid that.
The hybrids are the foot soldiers of a Chimeran army. They are a savage enemy, but also keen and tenacious. Hybrids quickly learn the methods of their adversaries. They already display expertise in British army tactics. Beyond their adaptive nature, the most obvious attribute of the hybrids is their sheer numbers. Hybrids have overwhelmed humans on every battlefield since the Chimeran invasion first reached in Britain. And here, Pekina, you will notice that the illustration, while obviously using a particular style, very resembles also the one of Ratchet and Clank, so pretty cool. The crawlers are a small beetle-like creature used to spread the Chimera infection. Though capable of limited flight, they are most often delivering inspired missiles. Upon finding victims, crawlers penetrate their bodies, usually through the mouth and nose. They inject the Chimeran virus and quickly expire. The infected host fall into a coma, and as the virus begins the inexorable conversion of the host into a Chimeran creature. So yeah.
Yeah, unpleasant that sounds.
The crawlers which fail to infect a host will eventually evolve into leapers instead. They first seek out sustenance, such as human or animal corpses. Once they gorge themselves, they develop a protective pupae, a leaper pod. They spawn from their pods upon maturation. The voracious young leapers attack opponents with teeth and claws. They should be dealt with at range whenever possible. Easily handled individually, leapers are lethal in large numbers. Adorable.
How nice.
You cannot have it as a pet. Unlike our Chimera intended for combat, the Manial strain is bred to be a tool for basic labor. Manias will generally ignore our Chimera as they mindlessly handle their duties. Seldom encountered in combat, they are unarmed and appear sluggish and unaggressive. However, like all Chimera, Manias are unpredictable. They should be considered dangerous, especially when cornered. Like I said, a grab attack of these depletes one tick of your health. Obvious that. Once delivered to the conversion centers, Chimera infection victims are developed in cocoons. Within each cocoon, a human body is broken down and recombined into a strain of Chimera. It is theorized that multiple human bodies are required for larger strains. External measures must be taken to keep the cocoon from overheating. These outside interventions suggest that the conversion process is not being performed in ideal circumstances. It is unknown if there is a more natural way for the Chimera to reproduce. Spoiler, we will see that in the following games and it won't be pretty.
I had a feeling. Like, that sounds like obvious foreshadowing.
The carriers collect infected humans from the battlefield after a crawler attack. They ferry their catch into the nearest conversion center. As these infected bodies are also the carrier's food source, not all of them survive to be converted. Early in the Chimeran invasion of Britain, carriers formed caravans hundreds of miles long. It is unknown the carriers have found a new role now that fewer victims are available for conversion. Remember again, Pedro, what year was Spielberg's War of the Worlds?
2005.
Oh, close. Okay. Howlers are large quadruped strain of Chimera. Their rudimentary vocalization ability to provide the beast with some level of communication. Their calls can be heard from miles and they have a chilling effect on those familiar with the source. Howlers have a leathery hide when shrugs almost light are higher. Combat shotguns at close range have proven highly effective.
Nice to know.
You still cannot have it as a pet. Sorry.
Oh.
Justin Chatwin is so bad in that movie.
Clever, calculating, extremely powerful, steelheads are a superior variant of the hybrid strain. Their heavy armor is usually seen at the forefront of battle as they lead hybrids and artifacts into combat. They willingly endure any punishment to advance the Chimera's invasion. steelheads wield the auger rifle, a weapon which tunnels through walls, making their relentless attacks virtually unstoppable.
Well,
And
that
lastly,
sounds
what we
efficient.
encountered, the Titan strain, which represents the limit of Chimera evolution of human form. They are massively strong and wield weapons more commonly found on vehicles, such as Stalker heavy siege pods. Titans are known to wear any form of body armor. Their calloused hides are sufficiently thick to protect them in the fiercest of firefights. While they have no weaknesses, attacks to their head are believed most effective. So basically, what the guide said to the cyber demon in Doom: shoot it until it dies.
Wow, sound advice. So, it sounds like when in doubt, aim for the head.
Basically, well, like I said, the cooling system works as location-based damage. It's just that, during the chaos of a fight, you might not have the opportunity to actually perform that. Especially because they keep swarming like that. There you go. Although it's funny, by the time we're recording this, I've since finished, technically, Resistance 3. As usual, we will see mostly in that, so I won't elaborate that much.
Sergeant Hale, security systems are down. Our Chimeran specimens are vulnerable.
You have Chimera specimen.
And you worry about them being vulnerable.
Can't be allowed to take back the angels. Yeah, that's also the beginning of a Doctor Who episode.
I heard about bad quality of the food in cafeterias, but this is ridiculous.
So bad it turns people into
Yeah, how
mutant
come-
spiders.
How come the Food Standards Agency didn't rate this place? They would have caught the zombie outbreak before it even started.
Because we're in the UK. Oh!
Yeah.
We have standards.
Like beans on toast, yes.
Hey, beans on toast is delicious and good for you.
Yes. I'm sure that goes extra great with the scones.
Oh, it's better than your heart attacks on a bun.
They are delicious, though.
You're both beautiful.
Anyway, to mention very briefly, because like I said, we're gonna have a making of video at the end of Resistance 3 that has Ted Price and a bunch of other reminiscent about the making of this first game. But maybe we'll also maybe take a look at one of the early trailers, because as it turns out, that's my mistake for not actually checking properly. But the game had if I recall correctly, a trailer at E3 2005 actually, and in the early stage. This looked more like Halo, believe it or not. Even the story was far different. It was involving a character actually going through different planets via wormholes and possibly a spaceship, and involved also time travel. But I get the idea that after a while, Insomniac might have realized that, that's my personal theory, it might have looked too close to Halo, and as a result reworked it with a setting that resembles stuff like World War II. Funny fact, Jovan, you were mentioning about potentially why not being World War I. The same interview mentions that Ted Price immediately considered the idea and immediately discharged it because he actually rationalized and said the technology of a weapon wouldn't have made back then, potential fun experience.
That's fair,
So,
but
like I said, it's the same thought process that EA had for Battlefield 1, as in they made sure that the weapons had a more futuristic. Oh come on, that's cheap.
really?
Hey.
Like I said, serious Sam level of bullshit. Oh, there's a pickup of the trail. Go get it. Or we're gonna ambush you out because if you do so.
Not to mention, Killzone was already intended to be a PlayStation's Halo killer.
Not only that, but man, if they had gone with the time traveling thing, then they would have ran. Well, maybe not alongside Singularity, but gosh, how funny would that have been? Two shooters that just happen to be close to World War II in time date. I mean, Singularity is after that, but you get the point, though. But they also revolve around...
Singularity, remember, Jova, Singularity was conceived originally more similar instead to BioShock. So not exactly a first-person experience, but more of a immersive sim kind, which, yes, it did have potentially FPS components, but primarily revolved around interactivity with object crafting and manipulation via puzzle environmental puzzles. But No, instead, again, Singularity took still a long time to be made anyway, so it was probably still in development actually when this got released.
So let me guess, the time traveling thing would have been affecting events of World War II, I assume.
I do not know the details of that. I probably should do more research in between parts, and find out, including potentially see if there are, videos floating around of the original trailer, because those clips are present in the video interview that I'm gonna show you. But it would be neat to see if there's actually an existing, video floating around.
So tell me, Tio, when's the part when we find Nikola Tesla well after he should have died, but it turns out he was replaced by one of the Chimera?
Sorry, Jova, this is not Dark Void, but there is no Tesla gun, but there are something close in these games. So, I mean, it's Insomniac. You should expect, quirky weapons. We already have, plethora of examples, but they get, more and more creative as time goes by. So
Yeah, like, this game has some issues, but I'll give them credit. It does still have that iconic Insomniac creativity with
Trust
the weapons.
me, Jova, the real problems will need to have a context for when we actually get at least to the second game.
So mainly story-based, I'm guessing.
That and gameplay, but like I said, you will need context. So me just mentioning here right now will not be as much impactful as you seeing firsthand.
Okay.
For all you need to know... Oh, actually, there is something that I can mention about this game. It's still also mentioned in that reminiscence video. But basically, you know how... You guys also mentioned specifically that, it felt odd when you jump in the middle of the action with Hale having no personality to speak of and everything.
Mm-hmm.
There was supposed to be a tutorial level on the US carrier ship. The bit at the beginning where Hale, montages up, puts his knife, in his shoulder and everything.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be a full-on tutorial level, sergeant, drill sergeant yelling at you and everything, and would give you a bit of an idea, but a bit similar to Half-Life, and would it give you an idea of how the control works and, give a bit of a gameplay personality to Hale. But it was ultimately apparently scrapped at the last second because they were not managing to work it out.
Oh god, they pulled an eco.
Wait, Eco also had like a bunch of character and story details that got cut?
Well,
Eco had like 70% of its story removed.
This is not, in this case, it's just, at least as far as I know, just one level at the beginning. Other than that, Hale's...
Sure,
Jesus.
yeah.
Hale's personality stays the same. It's just that beginning sequence probably would have helped.
No, Tio's right. Yeah, I guess it's still not that fair of a comparison. It's more like the overall process, like the overall mentality, like the principle. That's it.
I think I do get the issue. Like, well, I mean, again, the sequences and whatnot that would have given a character more character, sadly cut out for whatever reason. I do get the frustration in that regard. There have been quite a few products that, for one reason or another, do that. And I'm guessing the reason here was that they were focusing most of their resources on the multiplayer, given what made shooters popular at the time.
The multiplayer actually component, as I mentioned, was relatively solid for this. Again, I could not try specifically for myself, but there's that. Anyway, new enemy type, the sleep skulls. These ones love to frog leap and stick onto the walls like Spider-Man, and they do possess those double pistols that I showcased in York. So the best way to actually tackle them, potentially, the game tells you, as I'm thinking about to read in a second, the game suggests you to use grenades to deal with them, but I do believe it doesn't really work because the range impact of the grenades being on the ground would be too far to actually reach them properly. So here's the best thing to do. Use instead the tracker of a bullseye. They're much better. The sleep skulls are cunning opportunists who prefer to take pot shots and make blindsiding attacks rather than face their opponents. With their speed and stealth, they excel as scouts and ambushers. The discovery of a sleep skull requires immediate engagement to prevent them from summoning Chimera reinforcements. Explosives are recommended response. Hybrid bullseyes, rifles, and the sleep skulls on Reaper carbines are also suitable.
Okay, so far, these designs, while they're perfectly competent and all that, I certainly would be able to draw them, but they're just zombies.
Think of them more like lanky aliens with
I mean,
greys.
it's really generic. I've seen these designs a billion times before elsewhere.
That is
Well, the
true.
thing, go on.
You have to remember, Dwaves, this is supposed to be also a sort of a love letter to, well, not letter, but at very least inspired by sci-fi movies of the 50s. And, you know, those were famous or infamous for having these kind of designs for,
Honestly,
sci-fi
honestly,
creatures.
even 50 sci-fi movies had more color than this.
I think
Okay,
it is.
Oh, no, Jova. Yes, I agree with that on the color. Don't worry, the next couple of games will fix that.
Whoa.
Like I said, Gears comparison, it's not an organic giant fucking worm, but it's something that they use to dig stuff and as a transportation.
Yeah, I actually didn't mention.
Let's
that,
go follow
last
it.
time. Yeah, let's follow it. What could possibly go wrong?
Go on.
No, see, the thing is, when it came, one thing that's also important to remember about Gears of War is that, well, the original trilogy, because the Coalition's games basically abandoned that. The thing about the original Gears of War trilogy is that it's not just a cover-based shooter; it also has a noticeable and very prevalent horror element to it, especially in that iconic scene from the first game where we see that the shadow of that guy being eaten by that big locust brute, right? So the muted color scheme made sense to create a gritty, scary atmosphere. Obviously, being super colorful would have been counterproductive. So for Gears had a genuinely good reason to have a muted color scheme.
And I still feel like Gears was more colorful than a lot of games that played Follow the Leader because, yeah, I do get the feeling Gears was a trendsetter, and you know what? Being a trendsetter is not a bad idea. Well, I mean, not a bad thing.
True, but like I said, it gave leeway to the military shooters like COD to be entrenched, into this atmosphere that was just unpleasing to look at. Honestly,
Yeah.
I can see also where Drift is coming from because, like I said, and a lot of people did, because the next sequels will actually improve on this aspect and be much more colorful. The second game opts for a more, not necessarily brown, but more orange, more predominant kind of color. And the third one opts up between, blue and blue and yellow to represent, the atmosphere. But they're much more, colorized and stylized, which I honestly think it's worked for the better.
If I
also,
may.
someone turned off the lights. So go on.
My take on trends is this. What works in one game obviously isn't going to work for every game. That being said, when something is clearly a cool, hot idea, I cannot fault companies for wanting to do their own take on it. The problem is where they think, hey, if we do it exactly like this or that, just with a little things tweaked, that means, of course, audiences will love it. And yeah, sometimes it sells good in the short term, but we've seen a lot of times that in the long term, or heck, even still the short term, trying to play Follow the Leader, especially with certain iconic franchises, to suddenly change them up to be dark and gritty like this, does not work out well. Case in point, Bomberman X-Zero. Yeah, let's take a cartoony mascot platformer and make him out to be dark and edgy, as are the times a-showin'.
I'd been trying to radio Hale since the cave-in.
Can anything go right with your operation?
It doesn't seem like it, no.
The atmosphere that this game wants to go is very oppressing.
It does give me the feeling that I don't know if they intend for us to win or if they intend for the story
survive
to
at the very least.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the idea is, well, if they always planned for there to be a sequel. Again, I don't know how this game ends anyway.
That video that I mentioned, Ted Price himself specifically mentions one of his actual ideas for the company. He literally mentioned not just it was for everything. We do not want to create a single, end-all games. We want to create franchises. So they always go with the idea. That being said, I can tell you that there wasn't a lot of pre-planning for the story because of the way it evolves. I can tell you that.
Like, even with this first game, not to say that the story is bad, but it does feel like the story has a formula that it's sticking to. Oh, Hale's here. Something goes wrong. We lose contact. Hale's here. Something goes wrong. We lose contact. Why the hell is Hale still alive despite being, infected? We don't know, but it sure seems like something bad's gonna happen and we'll lose contact again. Like, it's not the worst, but okay, given its competition, and okay, I should clarify, when I speak competition, I'm talking about story and campaigns, because the multiplayer, for obvious reasons, we don't always take a look at that on this channel, given how...
And like I said, the servers are dead at this point of this.
So that being said, these games should be able to stand well even without their multiplayer. I think the ironic thing is that with a lot of servers being dead, it kind of does expose some of the issues in these games, seeing as how they relied heavily on the multiplayer, but you take away that multiplayer and, well, then you're left with the game as it is, and...
Yeah, because I can...
keep in mind, before this point we had Gears and Halo, like the two trendsetters. Those still had pretty good narratives, pretty good campaigns, and relatively good and meaty solo campaigns as well.
Whereas, I get the thing about this game is that I wouldn't even necessarily have a problem necessarily with the aesthetic, even though, like I said, the game doesn't really have doesn't really take advantage of it like Gears does. But I wouldn't even have so much of a problem if the narrative wasn't so
Vanilla.
By the nose.
Not just that, like the fact that the game doesn't really give us any reasons to care. Like the protagonist is generic as fuck. The other characters aren't exactly better, especially because the game barely focuses on trying to flesh out anybody. Like, the game doesn't really give us any reason to care about what's going on. Yes, it explains the backstory and what's happening to the world of the game, but without any downtime to, create some kind of emotional connection with anything, we have no reason to. It's like...
Okay, that I kind of disagree, because the entire point of the story and the franchise in general is that this is essentially the last, and this is for this, so this is the last bastion of humanity in Europe. Everywhere else it's almost completely gone at this point, and as a result, humanity has to fight a ferocious battle to survive, and take back their world as a result. Again, comparing this to Gears always gave you the idea that despite the setbacks, humanity was more on a decent kind of level with the locals, as in we're always able to get back to punch them in the face, thanks also obviously to the efforts of Marcus and the others, but there was a general more balance. In here, the enemy is severely stacked against you in terms of presence in the war building. Humanity is really on the brink of extinction at this point, and as a result, the situation is bleak enough that there can't really be that much levity, and as a result, it's also understandable why the campaign will all be about replicating the effort of Doom, of the old days of Doom and Wolfenstein, of just this lonely guy who basically becomes a murder machine to help humanity. Again, technically speaking, the second game will improve also on this aspect, but it will require context.
Also, that screen tearing just earlier.
I do agree that, this does have a basic but still effective bout of stakes that, yes, aliens are here to end you. It's looking pretty bad for the human race. Fight back. I will give Gears credit that I do find its stance unique for the original trilogy in that while humanity is fighting a battle that is incredibly serious, we do see scenes that show that there are still bastions of civilization, not unlike during the war.
And characters like Cole are there to, bring a bit more levity. So there is that too. From what I haven't still had to play properly for myself. From what I heard, Killzone works a bit better like that in terms of plot. From what I heard, the character of Rico is there to be basically kind of like Cole, for better or worse. But again, I need to experience myself.
I can say, I think this is also a bit of a missed opportunity for us not interacting with the platoon more. Like, one thing Gears of War did, which other games have taken inspiration from, particularly the War for Cybertron, well, specifically Transformers War for Cybertron, was having a party that was constantly interacting with each other to definitely give bouts of flavor text, or heck, even some backgrounds. You're like, Cole used to be...
Sorry, go on.
Like, Cole used to be that world's equivalent of, like, a football player, or... maybe he was still a football player? Yeah. And
well,
we do
a sportsman.
Well,
that's the important part.
He played football.
Anyway, new weapon, the number 42 air fuel grenade, has been issued for combating heavy and tight spaces commonly found in urban conflict. A thrown grenade adheres to most surfaces and immediately releases a cloud of flammable vapor. Once deployed, the cloud is ignited, creating a massive explosion. The resulting heat and pressure wave will cause vast injuries to anything caught in the blast. With a reliance on the external cooling system, Chimera is especially susceptible to damage. So basically, when you really get down to it, the game just gave you a grenade that farts on the enemy and then ignites it. Classic Insomniac.
Anyway, I was just trying to remember, because I was wondering if he was a football player or if it was like a made-up sport that resembled football in that game.
Okay. No, it was football. Well, remember, Taylor, we have to remember it's American football, not our football. No. Remember, like, we even see for ourselves, especially well in
doing the flashbacking 3.
Oh, I know.
Like, one of my all-time favorite moments in the series, where he sees one of his billboards and he says, one of my favorite lines in the series: "Have you ever felt like you died but nobody told you?" Man, I love that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean the dialogue in that was great.
Oh no.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, let's.
Wow, that's straight up Gears.
More like Alien.
Time to go.
Yeah. But just to mention, also speaking of which, of course, Jova, how can we forget Aliens, Colonial Marines, and O'Neill constantly be stuck in your way?
Oh god, that game.
Again, from what I heard, nowadays it's more functional thanks to even that stupid line coding change. Again, as always, incredible competency on part of Gearbox. Thanks, Randy. But it's something that I'll also need to experience myself, because now I technically have something that can run it decently.
What did you want to tell me before that?
No, it was mostly that.
Okay.
Because like you said, you mentioned about the Team Squad stuff, but go on, Pedro.
I actually wanted to go back to finish the trend-setting thing that me and Java were going on about. No, that's the thing. Like, and the big problem, Jova, is that when a franchise chases trends too much, it loses its identity in the process, like Gears did.
I knew Hale would eventually find the map room. Everything we had learnt about the Chimera in the past 2 decades was in there. We had maps of the Chimera invasion spreading through Russia, autopsy records of Chimeran creatures, charts of the dead.
So the chart says.
Yeah.
Wow, the Soviet Union died even 4 decades early.
Yes, actually. The third game will give us an ultimate confirmation that it started with the Tunguska event in 1908.
Ah, the meteor.
Yes, of course, sci-fi.
Everyone does like to do their spin on the Tunguskan event.
And yeah, that's important stuff. The Angels are basically the commanding unit of the Cavian and can mind control others. And this is what the lieutenant in charge, is worried about Hale, the fact that he might be influenced by the Angel. So that's one thing that we need to find out in this level, if he is or not.
Wouldn't it be a nice subversion if the Angel turns out to be a beautiful-looking Chimera?
Jova, get your furry ambitions out of here.
What? No, not that way, Jesus.
Continue,
Jova is a furry.
Okay, 1, these aliens don't even have fur. 2, God no.
Come on, Pedro.
No, but that's exactly it. No, like in a lot of the times, games like these were doing exactly that, changing the trend that was set by years in Halo, like Joe was saying. Some of them would do it fine, but others didn't, which is why we had stuff like some of the other shooters that was shown us here, like what was that one, the one that starts with an H.
Homefront.
That's it, Homefront.
The one where, for some reason, North Korea manages to invade the United States. Right.
And it
Right.
still feels off. I'll just say this: he who chases trends should be careful not to become overcome by said trends.
Yeah, that's the big issue.
Anyway, to keep answering also what Wiz was questioning before. Like I said, Wiz, I technically don't have much of a problem with the Chimera designs, but I do understand what you mean about the coloring, because like I said, that would be one thing that the next couple of games will change. So keep looking forward to see if the different palettes will be more appealing to you or not.
I'm guessing for story reasons the Chimeras upgrade their appearances.
I guess that's the way. Some of the Chimera enemy variety will return, other will not, and obviously new ones will be introduced. Anyway, let's use these to test one of the airfield grenades, why not?
Cute. Spicy.
In fact, Joe, I have an example of chasing a trend, but doing it well, which is something to the gameplay of Phantom Pain, where when Metal Gear went open world, it actually did it to enhance how the stealth works, because it's a lot more stealth opportunities and a lot of different mechanics you can do to avoid the enemy in ways that could not be accomplished in a more linear Metal Gear like the past. So again, when you have a great visionary like Kojima handling stuff like this, you can accomplish chasing a trend well.
Oh
But when
yes,
it's
yes. Like, I mean, ideally, most times, the idea for a series is to follow trends, and there are a good amount of examples of people who do that. It's just that the most jarring examples are where either a studio, franchise, and/or company as a whole just lose themselves to a trend, or worse, suddenly dedicate almost all their resources to following that trend. Activision are kind of like the poster boys for that, seeing as how, well, okay, granted, they sort of helped pioneer the trend, although, dear God, they were at the train front of it with Call of Duty.
It also helped with a bunch of the studio that they owned, did help a lot during the old days of the FPS. Like, again, we only technically saw a fraction of what Raven had been doing, but from what I checked, they had been there since the early days and made their own Doom clone back in the day, which was pretty cool to look at.
The problem is, I get it, Activision, money is good, but dear Lord, well, you all know what happened. Pretty much sooner or later, it was either a studio got killed or was sent off to the Call of Duty mines.
It really also depends on the person in charge, and we all know what kind of person Bobby Kotick actually has been. So
Yeah.
it's mostly about also that. All right.
See, the thing is, like, even though I grew up with the linear Metal Gear, going back to them to the core for this channel, after putting 250 plus hours into Phantom Pain, right? Despite having grown up with these games, going back to these games, man, I miss the way Phantom Pain controls.
Well, I think that is not necessarily dependent on the open world, but more like on the gaming itself.
Oh, sure.
Which,
But
that
that's
is,
the open world
that-
too. Like, Phantom Pain controls so much better than
Oh
the
no,
previous Metal Gear.
that's what I mean. Like the open world is the trend set, it's the trend chasing, but technically speaking, the gameplay is an evolution of what it has been of the previous titles.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bit, what Insomniac themselves did with Ratchet and Clank. Sure, they wanted to do new things, and potentially, try to do their own take on a TPS, but at the core, the games were still, following the same idea and sense of humor that Spyro had. So there is that.
I can actually mention that one where
New enemy type, I will mention them later. Go on.
Okay, I mentioned that, in Rift Apart, since we have a new ability that is very useful for dodging and platforming, that we use the circle button, the shooting button was moved to the now standard L2, R2 thing.
That one has been for at least the PS3 games, actually.
Oh, really?
Yes,
correctly, I think you can still use the circle button though.
I think, well, to be fair, I think it became remapped in general. It's been admittedly a while since I recorded them, but I still need to record eventually, you know, All for One and the Full Frontal Assault, so I'll be able to get a refresher on all of those.
I will admit it's been a few years, but I'm pretty confident in the PS3 ratchets you can still use the circle button to shoot if you want. But I'll have to go there. But I know in Rift Apart you can't. But there's there's a good reason for that. Circle has a new important function.
Like I said, Droba, don't get too attached to the people that Hale meet. Only a few of them will actually make it.
That tends to be the case in shooters like these. Like, oh, you'll occasionally get some allies, but they're usually cannon fodder.
Alright, this one is the Greyjack, decrepit hybrids which have nearly outgrown their bodies as we approach death. Their cooling units are overtaxed and their rampant metabolism steadily cooks them from the inside out. The resulting necrosis gives Greyjacks an odor of decaying flesh. Smell it. For unarmed and seemingly frail, the long reach of their wicked claws can be deadly. The wounds they cause are very difficult to clean and often fatal.
From the makers of Spyro the Dragon, zombies that stretch themselves to death.
Also, it's funny you mentioned that, Wibbs. I don't know if you noticed that, but some of the Augur sound effect of the radiation that they shoot use the sound font of Sparks bullets from Spyro 3.
Cute.
Huh.
Well, Dibs, to be fair, those same people who made Spyro also made a game on the Xbox One where the character literally turns to the player and goes, "Come on, relax. It's a fucking video game." So
Anyway,
I don't know. That was more fun than this. This is just kind of.
No, I understand where Dibs is coming from. Again, there's also the fact, Dibs, that what I'm not showcasing is the countless time that I died. There have been a lot, actually, so I can get it would be a very frustrating, experience for someone who wants to just a casual type of play.
It is weird to have this kind of difficulty because, for all the things the shooter genre was liked for, I don't think... Well, okay, I mean, harder difficulty, sure, but not by default I'm not sure if I could call it Nintendo level hard.
It really depends on the game, because, again, you have stuff already back then, like Doom, that had, Hurt Me Plenty, which is the easier difficulty, which still makes it, very a cakewalk, for example, that is true. But then you have stuff like the Hexen duology, which have, default very hard difficulty overall, even if I remember correctly, you can choose, but as a result, it's still very hard to begin with, and it requires a lot of, back and forward between the levels with a fuckload of enemies, chasing you, and it's very frustrating too. Oh, okay, now do what I'm about to do actually, because there's actually the giant mechanical worm about to arrive and deploy a functional Chimera. So here's what you do: park yourself here, and once again, as soon as you open, start throwing grenades. There you go. Because otherwise you'll be swarmed even more, from... Alright, if you notice, this is where the tank with the angel is. So, let's see if Hale can take a look and survive.
Alright then.
Again, the narration has been going on until this point and mentioned if they're worried that Hale is actually mind controlled by the angel.
They are really determined to not have him speak.
That wouldn't even be a problem if they characterize them in other ways, but they don't.
Well, you're about to give an example, actually.
Alright. Open your mind!
Basically, insert your Rev Brown scream here.
Yeah, it feels like it should be something I can do. The commander's backstory in Wreck-It Ralph 1, like
When I said open your mind, I didn't mean shoot me and open my mind with bullets.
So that
No, should have
happened.
been more
I'd
specific.
almost given up hope of him surviving. When I saw
Honestly,
him
lines
coming
like that
up
would
in the
probably
lift,
make this guy
I
more
could tell
bearable.
from
Look,
his
he even
face
does
that he felt an angel.
the whole
The
face.
scowl.
It's more surprising that the cover doesn't have him standing with his back to the viewer.
Hell
Because
yeah.
so
With
many,
his-
shooters did that.
With his
Yeah.
with his head slightly turned
Tilted,
around,
yes.
looking mopey.
Healing capabilities as well. We had tracked the
No,
Chimera
instead
leaving
the
Northern
you
Command
maybe
to
see
report
through the
in
thumbnail of
Somerset.
these videos.
Cartwright
Yeah,
was
we're going to
soldiers
Somerset,
after
Lives. We're paying a
It had
visit
been
to
2 hours since he
to
had
the south.
reported in.
But
Hale volunteered to go after them.
that's what we'll find out in the next
I
part, technically.
expected
But
he'd relocate Cartwright.
instead,
There
the
was no way I
game
could have
wisely
imagined what
uses
else
an
we would
old
discover
trend
in that
instead
college.
of having on the cover one of the enemy types. Instead, it's the skull of a generic hybrid of a Chimera with a human helmet on it. It's used for great impact, and in the past it has been, very effective. So there is that. All right, then, tune in for the next part where we actually go to Somerset, as mentioned. See ya.
See ya.
Ta-da!